Okay, I'm going to start that before I get a lot of grease going here. I'll get it all over my camera. Okay, hopefully that's in shot. I've kind of wiped all the solvent and garbage off my hands. I don't want to get any like pieces of grit or anything in the clean grease. There are little adapters you can use to pack these wheel bearings, but I find they're just about as messy, and I just prefer to do it by hand. So I've got a couple fingers worth of grease thrown in the palm of my hand. What I'll do is I'll take this bearing big side out and kind of hold the race together there and just press it into my palm like that. And hopefully you can see the grease starting to bulge out between the rollers on the other side. And I'm just going to work my way around the bearing like that. Kind of overlapping, I guess you could say, as to where I'm getting grease bulging out, just to make sure that I get grease pressed through the cavity between each and every roller, and that I don't miss one. You can see it doesn't take a whole lot of effort to get that grease to come up through there. And just kind of get a goober of grease in the center of the bearing. Just wipe it back in the palm of your hand and keep going. So, well, you get the idea. How am I going to turn the camera off without getting it all full of grease? Okay, let's see, where were we? Oh, wheel bearings are all greased up. I went around them twice generally to make sure that I can get good grease pushing out all the way through. Then in the hub we'll take about a golf ball size wad of grease and spread it in the cavity between the two races in the hub. The spindle here gets a light coat of grease, mainly as a rust preventative. And the other thing you want to do before you put the drum on is take your brake adjusting tool and make sure that star wheel, the little adjuster there, isn't seized. It's kind of a bummer to put it all back together and find that doesn't move. So they get stiff after a while, or if they lock up, you can pull that piece out and clean it up, whatever. So anyway, we're basically ready to set the bearing into the hub here and install the seal. Okay, we're just going to take our handy dandy bearing and plop it in there. I'll just put just a little bit more grease in there. And then the seal. A person could use a press to install these, but I found if you're careful you can do it with a fairly large hammer, just to have a nice flat face. You have to be careful, you can catch an edge of the seal on the hub there. I got started crooked, and ruin it. I may end up taking this to the press. And we'll stop when it's flush with the hub, like so. And it's time to get some clean paper towel and some brake cleaner. And clean up the drum real well without getting the brake cleaner in the grease. And we're all set to slide that back on the spindle. Okay, I apologize. When I went to stitch this video together, I realized I either ended up not starting the camera or I had a file get corrupted, and it had some information on it that I guess I'll explain without having the trailer part. So basically where we left off, we had the hub assembly cleaned out, the wheel bearing packed, the seal driven into the hub. You have to be real careful driving that seal in, as I mentioned before, that if you get it cocked a little bit, you can catch an edge of that seal on the hub and ruin it. Anyway, we'll just basically slide that assembly over the brake shoes onto the spindle, and from there the outer wheel bearing goes in. I like to take a finger full of grease and kind of go around the back side of that bearing as well. Then the washer just gets a light coating of grease just from your hands or whatever, basically to prevent it from rusting. And of course then finally the castellated nut goes on. The important part of that segment that I was missing is getting the nut the proper tightness. What I like to do is take a crescent wrench or whatever and tighten that nut down pretty good, like maybe 30 foot-pounds or so, just by hand, while rotating the drum in the forward direction. And the reason I do that is it kind of gets the grease out of the way, and once you've done that, if you back the nut off, you'll find a pretty bright line, a pretty crisp delineation, I guess you could say, as you're turning that nut between it being loose and then tight. It'll move freely, and then all of a sudden you'll feel where you've taken up all the play, and it tightens up. So once you've found that spot, we'll back the nut off from where it's tight until the cogs on the castle top of it line up with that hole for the cotter pin. That's where we'll put the pin. That should give you somewhere between about 1/1000th and 3 or 4 thousandths of an inch of end play. A person could measure it with a dial indicator. It's really not necessary. If you were to grab the brake drum and rock it, you may be able to just barely detect a little bit of play, which is fine. It'll be really, really slight. But we don't want any preload on that bearing to run hot and reduce its life. We also don't want it overly loose. That can allow the hub to chatter on the spindle and damage the bearings as well. So it's important that we get that 1, 2, 3 thousandths of an inch free play. And again, tightening it down pretty snug while turning the wheel, and then backing that nut off till it's loose, and finding that point where it's tight and going one notch back from that where the cotter pin lines up will get you that proper spot to have that cotter pin in, and no preload, and about 1/1000th of an inch of clearance on those wheel bearings. One little thing I should have mentioned, when you put that cotter pin back in, be sure and fold it all the way over so that it doesn't drag on the dust cap, as you've seen I've done here. Leave it sticking out, it's going to scrape things up inside the cap. So there's that. Okay, I've just mounted the wheel here and snugged up the lug nuts. The The reason being, when you go to adjust the brake shoes, if you were to run the shoe out until it started to drag and back it off a little bit, you may have just run the leading shoe out to the drum, and the other shoe might not be centered in the drum or moved out to the surface of the drum. So what we do to get a correct adjustment on these, I'm going to be adjusting the star wheel out while turning the wheel in the forward direction of rotation until it gets real stiff or unable to move it, and that gets the shoes centered in the drum. From there I'll back off the adjuster until the wheel starts spinning freely, and then give it about 3/4 of a rotation of that star wheel, a good 5 or 6 bites with the adjustment lever looser than where it started to run free after being run all the way out. And then we'll put the dust cover back on the adjusting slot and be ready to set it back on the ground. Couldn't really get a camera angle to show back in the back there, working the adjustment spoon in there and levering this up, but you kind of get a feel for it, and you'll kind of hear a sort of a springy sound when you're actually in one of the notches in that adjuster and turning it. You'll feel when you've got it right. So anyway, I just ran it out until the wheel wouldn't turn forward, and then backed it on off until it was free, and then another 4 or 5 bites from there. Even when it's properly adjusted, you'll still hear a little skiffing as it rotates, which is just the magnet dragging on the armature there. So it spins freely. We'll put the dust cap back in there and set it down, and we'll torque the lug nuts, and that's pretty much it. One note on trailers with multiple axles: anytime you put on new wheels or disturb the lug nuts, they have a tendency to can have a tendency to come loose after a while. I think it's the way they scrub sideways, turning tight corners and so on. So I'd recommend once you've done your wheel bearings, after you've towed for a little while, go back with the torque wrench and double check all the lug nuts. Additionally, as just kind of a double check, I like to sometime when I'm out on the highway and not using the brakes a whole lot or whatever, pull off and just feel the hubs. Lukewarmish or whatever is fine. If you've got one that's running hot, then you know you've got a problem you need to deal with before it blows itself up. Anyway, I hope this is helpful for somebody. I get questions and asked to help with trailer brakes once in a while, so I thought maybe a how-to video intended kind of for somebody that hasn't done this sort of thing before might be helpful. Thanks for watching.